Hi everybody, welcome back to the Limit Breakdown, where we break down the latest in movies, TV, and everything going on in entertainment. Today we're going to be doing our Season 1 review of Rings of Power. Alright, and to kick us off, our too long didn't watch review of Rings of Power is 3.5. So, basically what we say is it's worth the watch. I think it's a good beginning, especially if you're a pretty big fan of Lord of the Rings. There were some areas for me that left some things to be desired, but overall I think it had a lot of promise. So 3.5 hearts, check it out on Amazon Prime. Stay tuned after the intro for a full in-depth review and thoughts on Season 1 of Rings of Power. Thanks.
Hi everybody, welcome back to the Limit Breakdown, and we're going to be reviewing the Season 1 of Rings of Power on Amazon Prime. So, starting off, what'd you think?
Okay, so this was conflicting for me. If I'm not gonna sugarcoat it at all. I enjoyed bits and pieces of it. It felt like it was. I mean, it didn't feel like it was a very slow burn.
Yes. Agreed.
The beginning part of most episodes were kind of just a lot of setup. I mean, the entire series is a lot of setup. I feel like there's a story that they intended to tell, but they didn't trust the audience enough to piece it together. And then it didn't really grip me in at any particular point. Like, most of the time, the last 15 minutes of the episode was really all you needed to watch to get the gist of what was happening in that particular episode. And so, like, I feel like they took a concept for what should have been one amazing 2-hour movie and stretched it out into 8 hours or more.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. So I actually really enjoyed the series. I felt it had the same pacing as the movies, which were very slow. There was a lot of bits and pieces here and there that was very crucial, but the pacing itself was very slow, and I totally agree with you. I think it's because of that I kind of liked it, only because I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan itself.
Yeah. I mean, the one advantage that this series has is that it's very, very lore heavy.
Yeah.
And so, like, a lot of the things that I didn't know, things that were mentioned, things that were referenced, very quickly, went online, Googled them, found out, and I'm like, oh, this is actually pretty cool. And so it's a good way, I guess, for those of us that are more curious to dive deeper into the Lord of the Rings mythos. But I feel like as like your average Joe audience, like, not everybody's gonna take the time to do that.
Yeah,
and so there are a lot of people that are like, who, what, where?
Yeah, that makes sense. So Season 1, at least specifically the last few episodes, where they built it up so much. I felt like the culmination of all the buildup that was happening, I felt like the climax wasn't as great. I mean, it was a great climax. The great season finale wasn't as grand as we sought it to be. And the cliffhanger that we were left on, I was so upset. I was happy because there was another season.
Yeah.
But it was not satisfactory to a certain degree.
I understand that they had to basically set the stakes and set the scale up. But I felt like there wasn't enough Rings of Power in Rings of Power, because effectively we got 3.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's that's what they had at the end. They're like, that's the elves get the 3 rings.
Yeah.
I generally thought they're going to make all of the rings at once, but now it makes sense that they're going to split it up into
from
multiple.
From the little bit that I knew, I always knew the elven rings were separate anyway, because Sauron wasn't as involved in their creation, so he couldn't control them.
Yeah.
As much as the others. So I knew that makes sense to a certain degree. I also didn't really like how they kind of, like, from the very beginning, to me it was pretty obvious that Halbrand was Sauron, right? But then you looked at it, we looked at it, and we're like, I don't know, it seems a little obvious. And then they try to play this kind of like switcheroo thing with the wizard that fell from the sky, which turns out it might be Gandalf.
I don't think it's Gandalf. It's one of the 9 wizards, because I think there's 9 wizards in total.
Yeah.
It's one of the 9 wizards. I think he's one of the first ones.
The reason why I say it might be Gandalf, there's been a couple of YouTubers that have put together different evidence for why it might be Gandalf, and one of the things that they alluded to was his relationship with the Harfoots.
Yeah, that I can
and
see
why
that.
he loves and so why he has such a warm spot for the hobbits later on. But towards the end, when I'm terrible with the names on this particular show. The little woman Harfoot. Nuri.
Yeah.
Right. When she's like, oh, I don't even know which way you go, and he goes, oh, just follow your nose. And it was, one of the things that Gandalf said to Bilbo, yeah. So
yeah, I can see. I think the parallel that they have between them makes sense. I don't think it's Gandalf at all. I think it's just one of the other.
The other theory that I heard is it could be one of the Blue Wizards.
Yeah.
That they've never really had any much more development than what it was in like the appendices. But going back to my original point with Halbrand, like it was very obvious that he was Sauron, and then it was so obvious that it was like, it can't be him. Like it's not. It's too on the nose.
Yeah. I think so. I think the starting off when they did the whole the guy who we thought was going to be Sauron, the dark elf, right. So that episode where they finally where the Numenor's army comes in charging, and wrecks that whole area, and they capture the dark elf, and they're like Adar, his name is. And then they're like, who are you? You are clearly Sauron. And he's like, no, I killed Sauron, but that's not me. I want to build a new world, peaceful, whatever. And I was like, okay, he's not Sauron. In my mind, I went immediately what you just said. I was like, it's either this new wizard who's going to be Sauron, or it's going to be Halbrand. Fast forward to the last episode when those 3 apprentices, whatever, the other people came and they found the wizard, and they're like, you are Sauron. I was kind of upset because the whole time they're building this wizard to be kind of like a good guy type thing. He's like, he does he has destruction, but he has life in the destruction, especially the scene when the fallen tree breaks the tree and then life comes out of it. And as soon as they said Sauron and that this is Sauron, I was kind of upset.
Yeah.
Because it would break your heart for a character to be that well developed. Yeah. And then it turned out to be a villain. Yeah. So when they switched over to Galadriel looking at the family line, and she's like, Halbrand's not who he says he is. And then she tries to kill him, and he goes boom, and he stops her hand. Yeah. He's like, say my name. You know who I am. I was like, all right, way more sense. Makes way more sense.
I don't know. I kind of would have liked. If the wizard would have been Sauron. For me, because one of the things about Tolkien's writing is that it's, as much as you have clearly defined lines of good and evil, which is kind of a key emphasis of fantasy. He's always. One of the main things is that not everything good stays good, and not everything evil stays evil. And so it would have been I think it would have at least been interesting to introduce Sauron as not having been this, because for generically he's been the literal evil eye in the sky, no dimensions, no complexity, just evil for the sake of evil. It would have been interesting, in my opinion, to at least have shown him to, for a brief second, however brief that is, to have had a little bit more complexity to his character.
Yeah, so I can see that.
I thought that would have been interesting. But again, that's not what we got. And I mean, it was pretty much, I mean, I was kind of like, oh, like right in front of our faces, like that's what you're gonna do. And looking back now at that reveal, like so many more things make sense. Like when he first went into Numenor and he's walking around, like, wow, it's crazy that a guy like me is in a place like this.
Like, I don't want to leave. I was like, huh. That makes way more sense now. He's like, I don't want to leave. He just wants to do his own thing. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. It does make a lot. I mean, from that particular episode, you know, when he was helping the architect build the rings, he's like, oh, well, have you tried mixing elements? You know, enhancing their power, XYZ things. And then you're like, so the whole time prior to them revealing that he was Sauron, I was like, I want to know how he's supposedly a king and from the past.
Yeah.
He is really a good blacksmith. And a good warrior. So I was like, I want to know what his actual story is, because none of that just makes sense. Right? How can a king be a blacksmith and a warrior? It would make sense if a king is a warrior. Right? Or if he spent time, you know, but both, I was like, something's amiss.
Yeah.
And then when he started doing alchemy and helping them with the alchemy, I'm like, it everything did connect for me. And I think that is the reason that I particularly liked. There's a reason I like the show as a whole, is they do make connections finally at the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those situations where, yes, some of the story eventually got pieced together, but for me, I feel like it took too long to get there.
Yeah.
I don't know what the direction or the plan is going to be for pacing wise for the next season, but they have to pick it up. Like, you know, obviously, like, I'm not gonna hide my bias. I prefer House of the Dragon a little bit more, but it's also like, I don't know. I could understand sacrificing the pace of the story in sake of character development. But we really didn't get any character development with any of the characters.
Galadriel had a slight character development. She went from being just straight brash, and I want to kill Sauron, to understanding some of the characters, to be like, okay, I have to think about their feelings.
And Galadriel, I'm glad that you mentioned Galadriel, because, you know, she's the closest thing that we have to a protagonist in this particular story, and I felt that she, for the most part, was really, really annoying.
Oh, yeah. The first few episodes of Rings of Power, I wanted to punch her in the face. I was like, you're right in what you're saying, but chill out.
Like, she had the right intention, she had the right idea, she was just going about it in the worst possible way.
I agree.
And it's a difficult thing to establish a story where your protagonist is unlikable.
Yeah, fair. So at the parallel of all of this, there is the story of Elrod and the dwarves, right? Trying to find Mithril. I think that story to me was a lot more captivating, right?
Yes, I agree.
Because you see the dynamic of the elves wanting to, like, look, there's this Black Death type thing coming. It kind of reminded me of the Venom from the Venom symbiote from Spider-Man.
Yeah,
kind of just creeped up. And they're like, we need the dwarves' help, and the dwarves are like, yes, but it's mind way in the deep, and we could all die.
Yeah.
So I thought that dynamic was fantastic, especially when it came to Thorin and the king.
Yeah.
Right, because and it makes sense. So at one hand you have, do we save dwarven lives, protect our people, to the culture,
Mm-hmm.
or do we help out a friend in need?
Mm-hmm.
Possible have some issues, but do this.
The big conflict was that they were risking waking the Balrog, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Risking, well, it was that as well as risking the lives of the dwarves while mining it. Because when they first introduced Mithril, Thorin was like, hey, this is... Durin, not Thorin. Durin was like, hey, this is mined way in the deep. The mines are very finicky, like it can cave in and stuff like that. That's why we stopped doing it.
Yeah.
So it's one of those, do we help them or do we not, right? And I thought that dynamic was really well explained. And that conflict was... I genuinely loved that whole story.
Honestly, yeah, their relationship too was really interesting when Elrond came back to ask for Durin's help, and Durin's like, bro, where you been? Like, it's been like 20 some odd years, and I haven't seen or heard from you. Like,
yeah.
Like, I understand, to elves, 20 years is nothing, but like, you weren't at my wedding, you ain't met my kids, like, bro.
2 of them. Yeah, I love their dynamic. And then when they're in the mines finally, and he's like, I'll just get the Mithril myself. And he talks to his wife, who I love. Durin's wife.
Yeah,
she is a phenomenal character and a phenomenal actress. I forgot her name. I thought she did a great job. And then she's like, he's your friend, just go mine it yourself.
Yeah,
Forget the king. And when they're having their back and forth, and then he's like, did you throw the episode 1 when they meet and they have that tournament of breaking the rocks? He's like, did you throw that? And he's like, I'm not saying that I threw it. I'm just saying that
you needed to win.
I was like, I might have got tired, so just like, it was. I loved it because he's still saying, he's still letting his friend be the better man, but he's just like, maybe. I love their dynamic. I thought it was awesome, amazing.
Which is funny too, because watching that scene, like, I'm like, he threw that. Like, he didn't get tired. He didn't lose. He threw that. Like, I called that from the beginning.
Yeah, that was hilarious. It was actually pretty good.
Moving on to the Númenóreans. Mm-hmm. I think their dynamic is pretty interesting, and then the situation with the queen, right? Now, she ends up blind.
Yes.
At the end.
So the scene when the volcano erupts, and
that's Mount Doom, right?
Yeah.
Basically.
Mordor, they say what is it? Yeah. That the mountain itself is Mount Doom, but it converts to Mordor. But basically, yeah, so they're trying to look for people, get survivors, and they're trying to save Isildur, who is trapped. Mm-hmm. And when the roof falls on Isildur, I think the ashes or the embers get in her eye, and she gets blinded. And then when they're going back, like you said, I think that whole scene when she's just walking straight with her eyes just blaring, and they're like, and she's like, "Are we out of the fog?" He's like, yeah.
We've been out of the fog for like a mile.
Yeah, and he's like, keep going. I don't want anybody to know. I thought that was a very a power move. I thought it was awesome.
It's very interesting with me for that particular character, because how against she was in getting involved in the first place, to helping out Galadriel, and from my understanding, the Númenors are all descendants from the elves, right?
They're not descendants from the elves. The elves helped them establish Númenor. But they're not descendants.
Well, I thought like the city of Númenor was founded by Elrond's twin brother.
Yes, but the Númenóreans are still humans. I'm pretty sure. They were just helped. Their technologies and their city were built by elves. And they were allowed to stay there.
Okay, so I was a little confused because I thought basically like Elrond married like a human girl and then just kind of... So like these people have like a certain percentage of elven in them, I guess.
No, they just have elven influence. Because it was given to them in the last war. And they're like, hey, since you helped us out, here's this land, here's this technology.
Gotcha. But don't Numenorians have like longer lifespan than regular humans?
Yes,
Okay.
because they're just healthier. They're not peasants.
Okay. See, I thought that was because of the elven
The
thing.
elven thing, no, they're just better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Superior race.
Yeah, that's why they're very like protected and like proud people. Like you have to do things this way. But yeah, like that the whole the Numenorians came to help with the war, and then as soon as the queen's eyes got blinded, she's like, I gotta go back and regroup for the main fight that's coming.
Yeah, and what was the guy's name? Isildur's father.
I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he was very supportive of Galadriel in the beginning, and then towards the end, he's like, man, I never should have followed her.
Yeah. It's because his son died.
Yeah.
Even though...
Or he thinks.
Well, yeah, because Isildur finally does get the ring.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, yeah.
But yeah. I think that was a very good... and I think even when the queen was like, we'll go back to the Numenor, we'll come back to fight, and he turns away, and he's like, this was for this, you know? So, yeah, I agree.
So, getting down to brass tacks. I feel like this series as a whole, like there were definitely a lot of points that I enjoyed. There were definitely a lot of good foundations. I feel pacing issues aside, it did feel like it gave us something to look forward to, which is I guess all you can really ask for from a season 1. But it definitely, I felt like for the next season, they're going to need to up the pacing. They're going to need to...
or at least have a stronger story to grasp on.
Yeah, and like I said, it's one thing to sacrifice the pacing of the story in order for character development, but you can't not have both.
Yeah.
You got to have one or the other.
Yeah, I didn't... In all honesty, now that I think about it, so the third storyline that's going on at the same time is the village and the...
And the Harfoots.
The Harfoots is 4 storylines. Is the village that was attacked originally by the orcs, and the elf guard
over the Southlands, right?
Over the Southlands, in the Southlands, and the elf guard, and that I think that whole storyline is just not unnecessary. Is just overdrawn out.
Yeah.
Right. So I thought that the kid was. Another thing was maybe the kid becomes Sauron. Yeah. Right? Because he has to take the blood from the sword to build. And I thought...
And that sword ended up not being a sword. It was more like a key, right?
Yeah. So that's what happened. That's what made Mount Doom explode. Yeah. So the old guy used the sword, turned it, and then it made Mount Doom become what it is. So that the orcs can come out at sunlight. But that whole storyline, I was like, it's needed, but it's too drawn out, right? They could have added a dynamic that the kid might become Sauron, right? Because this sword can possess you.
I've seen online an interesting theory about the kid, where it says that the character that we think Halbrand was supposed to be, like the lost king of men or whatever, that since the kid has basically an unidentified father, which at first I thought that the kid would end up being like part elf, just because of the relationship that the one elf had with his mom. Yeah. But there's another theory going around saying that he might actually be the actual descendant from the original king.
That makes sense. They did mention his father. I think he had passed away from some disease or something. So he was in the story wise. He was in there. Now if it's his true father or not, I don't know. There's some Game of Thrones stuff going on in Rings of Power, but he was in the story somewhere.
There's a lot more kings involved in this story.
A lot less.
But I thought it was interesting towards the end when he meets up with Galadriel trying to get out of Mordor, basically.
And then she's like, take my sword. And I was like, don't give... He's the worst person to give a sword to. Don't. Last time he had a sword, he messed it up.
Last time he was stabbing himself. Yeah. It goes the other way.
Man. But I think that, yeah. So...
Which, by the way, it seems that you can simply walk into Mordor.
One doesn't simply walk into Mordor. As Galadriel walked into Mordor.
Yeah.
Yeah, that name change, they're like, this place is Southlands, where it's like, what will we call it now? And they had the script change over to Mordor. I was like, okay. I can see the world building now.
Mm.
So hopefully you're right. I do hope that next season picks up a little bit more.
So, give me your final thoughts.
Overall, I enjoyed the series, right? I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. I still think that it's a great show. Is it worthy of being a phenomenal show? No. It follows the pacing of the original Lord of the Rings, which is slower for the world building. Overall, still entertaining, but does have some issues. I stick by my rating of 4.5 because of the pacing. I wouldn't mind giving it a 4, only because I'm a fan and I enjoy seeing some of this stuff and the nostalgia. But I'm satisfied with my 3.5 rating.
3.5, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I said, there are some points in the story where it does pick up. It could have. Had there been a little bit more character development for me, I would have been better, more comfortable giving it closer to a 4. But I think 3.5 it shows a good bit of potential. But honestly, like, the pacing was just entirely too slow. There were elements of the show where it was literally a chore for me to watch through it, and in an age where we have so many options as to what to watch, like, it was really more the passion for the source material that pushed me through, much less than the actual content. So.
Gotcha.
But hopefully it picks up in season 2, and I mean, I don't know what the ratings were like, but considering what they spent on
$1 billion.
Yeah, this is the most expensive show ever produced, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, so
and also what's interesting, I just found this out recently. So one of the reasons that the show is so expensive is not only because of the production value, but because so the first time around when Lord of the Rings was shot in New Zealand, whatever, and then when The Hobbit came around, New Zealand was like, okay, well, we want some money and whatever. So now when they did this show, they're like, no, we want some money. Yeah. And the show, because it's not from the original people, they're like, we need I forgot the legal word for it, but basically the rights to use Lord of the Rings and everything like that. So they just paid a lot in taxes and rights just to do the show, and that's what made it $1 billion.
What I thought was interesting, though, is that they don't have the full rights, because they don't have the rights to the Silmarillion. They only have the rights to the appendices.
Yeah. So it definitely is a weird dynamic for that, but that's why the show is so expensive. Is because half the time they're paying the thing. So on IMDb, Rings of Power got a 6.9.
Yeah, I mean, like I said,
right along with that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's one of those. It was a pretty slow burn for me, but I still think the show had a lot of potential. So definitely, if you're a fan of Lord of the Rings, give it a shot. See what you think about it. I'm excited for the next season. Hopefully, they can bring a little bit more oomph to the next season and actually live up to, because the show has a lot of potential. It has.
100%.
Yeah. But want to say thanks again for everybody for tuning in. Please like, comment, subscribe to the channel. You can check us out on YouTube. We'll have clips on Instagram and TikTok, and you can also download the podcast wherever you get your podcast services: Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Check us out. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. We want to thank all of our supporters and viewers out there. As we continue to grow our channel, we want to say thank you for all the love and support and appreciation that we've gotten. We've hit our first milestone of 100 subscribers. Pretty stoked about that. And we did our first giveaway, and we want to keep the ball rolling on that. Our next big milestone is going to be 250. All right, 250 subscribers. And for that, we are going to be giving away this Count Dooku lightsaber. So, however long it takes, when we reach 250 subscribers, we'll put the names of the people that have liked, commented, and subscribed into a randomizer, and we will announce the winner after we've reached those 250 subscribers. So, pretty stoked. We are very excited to continue to have the channel grow. And yeah, so if you want to be entered for a chance to win on any of the following videos, hit like, comment on the video, and make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. We appreciate you guys.
Thank you.